Hi, this is Fighting Fear with Kevin Ashworth. I'm Kevin. Welcome to my new YouTube channel. I am an anxiety therapist. I specialize in the treatment of anxiety disorders using cognitive behavioral therapy, exposure response prevention, the gold standard treatment for anxiety disorders. And I run a clinic in Portland, Oregon. That's all we do. We specialize in those things. So I have these vlogs to help educate people and provide some information, insight, and maybe some help to individuals regarding their anxiety or how to get treatment or what to do next. Today I want to talk about what is exposure therapy. I think it's a unique type of treatment. It's a very simple treatment in its formulation, but it's also gotten a really bad rap. Not many people do ERP. Throughout the country, particularly in Portland, there's only a handful there's really 2 clinics that do exposure response prevention work, and then there's a handful of individual clinicians that do exposure response prevention, and so it's not very prevalent, the practice of it. And so let's talk about what it is. Sometimes it's easier to talk about what it's not. So it does have a bad rap, and I think it has a bad rap for many people that believe it's just doing something terrifying or kind of pushing yourself into the worst case scenario, and that's not the case. There is a name for that. We call it flooding, and sometimes that can be appropriate, but again, it all has to be clinically relevant and clinically indicated for us to make any decision about how to help someone. So exposure therapy is based on the principles of learning theory. In learning theory, we develop fears and anxieties through the process of classical conditioning. And so a neutral stimulus is paired with a stimulus that becomes scary, and those stimulus develop a relationship. And so what was once just a neutral stimulus is now a conditioned stimulus to fear. So an example of that is, in fact, my own personal example is when I was in grad school, I got stuck in an elevator and really got scared. In fact, had a panic attack in that elevator. So a neutral stimulus, an elevator, which I'd ridden lots of times, now became paired with this conditioned response, which was the anxiety, and now there's this conditioned stimulus, which becomes the elevator. So that's how anxiety disorders are developed. So classical conditioning, think Pavlov, the bell, the dog, if you've had any psych classes. That's the development of anxiety, which can happen in absolutely anyone. Anxiety is maintained through operant conditioning. So what you do in the face of anxiety, whether you reinforce or you punish that experience of anxiety. So in my case, I got out of the elevator alive. I went to class. When I came back out, as I walk up to that elevator, that feeling came back. So I took the stairs. That is when an anxiety disorder can really be born. So you can think of all the behaviors that you engage in or somebody you love engages in throughout the day that maintains the anxiety by avoiding the distress. It's common sense. It's a hedonistic principle of us as a human to avoid feeling bad, but that is the development of anxiety. Therefore, the treatment of anxiety is counterintuitive in that we have to do the opposite what our body wants us to do. And so we have to move towards the thing that is scary. We have to ride the elevator over and over and over. The thing that many people get wrong is they believe that riding elevators again and again is what they need to do. And then they express that they're not getting better. And part of that is they're riding the elevator with trepidation. They're riding the elevator with caution. They're riding the elevator with worry that the anxiety may return. If you're worried that it may return, you're less vulnerable, you're more hypervigilant, and then when it doesn't return, you're super pleased and relieved. So if you ride that elevator, and when you exit the elevator, your anxiety is abated, well then you haven't actually challenged the anxiety because the brain still believes you feel better because you got off the elevator. You actually have to ride the elevator until your anxiety reduces and then only get off because now you're creating a new relationship. So exposure therapy, what we do is we create a hierarchy with individuals about the things that they typically avoid or behaviors that they engage in to mitigate their anxiety. And then we systematically work through each one of those behaviors with absolute informed consent, complete control of the client to make decisions about what we do next. But what we do is we just behave differently. So in a previous video I have about cognitive behavioral therapy, I talk about the relationship between thoughts and feelings and behaviors and how behaving differently is so paramount to making change in one's life, both emotional change and thought changes. exposure therapy is that behavior piece. That no one could have told me riding an elevator was safe. I logically already knew that, but my body didn't believe it. The only way I could train my body to believe that was to ride the elevator over and over and over. Only after nothing bad happened could my body have the experience that it was safe. So that is one example of how exposure therapy works. It's a very basic example. We do exposure for OCD, for trauma, for social anxiety, for generalized anxiety. We provide a 6-hour intensive prolonged exposure for simple phobias, so things like heights, bridges, dogs, blood phobia, insect phobia, and we're pretty successful at treating those in one session, a long 6-hour session. But other than that, we can pretty much expose anyone to anything, and it's a very effective method, and it's highly supported in the research. And so if you have any more questions about that, please give me a call. Or email me, I should say, at kevin@nwanxiety.com. Please go to our Facebook page, Northwest Anxiety Institute. Again, do something every day that scares you. Thanks for watching. I'll be back. Thanks.